So now it's time to present the documents you created in your loop. I'm going to add one document that doesn't show up in the template because it's just how my rhythm works and how I like to present documents. You are going to come up with your own style naturally. So here I am. By the way, let me illustrate what I did here. This is the loop. I said add document, went to templates, Colorado Interactive Forms, and I'm going to search down for the definitions, which probably is going to be under D. Definitions of working relationships by, here we go, definitions of working relationships listing. I'm going to copy this, which means that it's going to be brought over into my loop. There it is. Good. Okay, I'm going to hit add document to close that. Okay, so definitions of listing documents. I'm going to autofill so that it throws Joe Blow's name in there. And I'm going to put in a date because I'm presenting these today. I'm going to put in the first, Joseph Blow, via email. Now, brokerage firm's name, Keller Williams, Colorado West Realty LLC. That's the name of our brokerage. Save. Now, on presenting listing documents, ideally you present these in person. That way you have paper between you and the buyer. You're sitting at a desk together. You're having a conversation about everything in the documents. If that can't be, if the buyer is out of town or you just can't get at the desk at the same time with them, emailing them documents is acceptable, and going over them on your computer is not a bad thing to do. If you are going to be face-to-face with the buyer and you know at some point, or the seller, and you know at some point that they will be leaving before you have documents signed, go over them in person. But you know, that really only applies with the contract, or mostly applies with the contract. If you're going over them in person and over the phone, you're going to need to share them with them because you want them to sign electronically. If you're sitting at a desk with paper, they can sign them. They can sign the copies that you have at your desk. The trouble is you then need to scan those copies and upload them into the loop. So what we're going to do here, this whole bunch of listings, I just click this to select all of these listing documents. I'm going to hit share. And see Joe Blow, he's checked there. Also, he's designated as a person who can sign. I'm going to share with him. Please wait. These documents have been shared, waiting on others. Done. Okay, now those documents should show up in my email because the second Travis Cox forwards to this email address. But you know what? I may need to sign in if I'm going to sign them. This is a little squirrely sending them to myself right now. So I'm just going to go over presenting them. I'm going to go over presenting them. We're going to start with the definitions. If I was presenting these in person, I would present the definitions first. This is not a required document. You'll see on here, definitions is not a required document anywhere in here. I like to use it because it has these paragraphs. You'll recognize those from the brokerage disclosure to buyer. And they have wonderful paragraphs explaining seller's agent, buyer's agent, transaction broker. So we're going to start with that. I'm going to take a drink of water, then we'll get back to it. Okay, so now this is Travis talking to the client. Here's the definitions of working relationships. And this is not part of the contract. This is just a disclosure letting you know that these relationships exist. There's the seller's agent, buyer's agent, transaction broker, and customer. So listing your house, I'm going to represent you as a seller's agent. And a seller's agent works solely on behalf of a seller. And they have this fantastic standard of the utmost good faith, loyalty, and fidelity. I'm working for you. I'm negotiating on your behalf. I'm doing what I can to get you what you want. A buyer's agent does pretty much the same thing, but for a buyer. Now, the state of Colorado has this other relationship called a transaction broker. And in this role, a broker representing a buyer or a seller, needs to be impartial. They don't negotiate on behalf of anybody, and they don't owe anybody the utmost good faith, loyalty, and fidelity. Now, that's not to say that they can lie to them, but it just means that they're acting as a functionary, just filling out paperwork and doing what the buyer or the seller wants them to do. Now, because you and I don't really have much of a relationship, if a buyer comes and wants to buy your house, I can switch to this transaction broker relationship, and I'll represent any buyer as a transaction broker in making an offer for your house, and I'll be representing you as a transaction broker also. Now, note to everybody listening, if you have to stay an agent, you would mention customer, but I'm not going to at this point. Back to role play. Okay, so this is not a contract, so we're just going to have you sign that electronically here. Go ahead and do that. Click, click, click. Great. Boom, 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 boom. Oh, you have to be logged in. You have to go to the email thing to do that, guys. Okay, so let's go to the listing presentation, or the listing exclusive right to sell listing agreement. Okay, so here it says I'll be a seller's agent, just like we talked about, and here's today's date. I'm a multiple person firm, which means that you have a relationship with the brokerage firm. This agreement's between the brokerage firm and you, and not necessarily between you and I. If I was a one-person firm, it would be between you and I, because I would be the same thing as the brokerage firm. So here's you. This is, did I spell your name right? Great. Okay. Keller Williams, Colorado West Realty is our brokerage. Here's me, my name. Here's the property. It's in Mesa County. It's lot 3G, 3 in Grand Junction, 123 Main Street. Beautiful house, by the way. Or beautiful condo. Listing period. It's going to start today, and it's going to end this Friday. I'll have it sold by this Friday, I promise. Let's see. So, with your permission, I'm not going to go over every line in this, if you don't mind. I'm just going to go over the big parts. I'm going to go over the big parts and everything that was filled in. Does that sound good to you? Excellent. Okay. So here we go. If any date falls on a weekend or a holiday, it gets automatically extended to the next business day. I'm going to be a seller's agent unless I have a relationship with both parties. At that point, I'll become a transaction broker, which means that I can represent a buyer in purchasing your home. These are the uniform duties. These are all the things that you think, pretty much what you think I should do. Performing the terms of any written oral agreement, presenting any and all offers, accounting for money, doing all of these fantastic things that a licensee needs to do. Now, if we go down here, this section 6, these are the additional things that I'll do as an agent. And these are, I like to say mostly philosophical. Promote the interests of the seller with the utmost good faith, loyalty, and fidelity. Seek a price and terms that are seeking a price and terms set forth in this listing contract, and counseling you. Note here that in 5.8 we've got will checked. So if we have other offers, this box gives me permission to tell other people that we have that offer. It seems obvious why I would want to do that, because I would want to encourage other people to bring in an offer or bring it in fast. But this is one of those things that's kind of your call, because if it says will not, it doesn't give me the ability to goad other people into making an offer. However, if it says will, it could scare people off who don't want to compete, who don't want to be in a competing situation. So we're going to leave it as will, because I love calling other brokers and saying, hey, I've got an offer coming in, your buyer better get on it. Okay, section 7, my favorite section. It's the section where I get paid. This is compensation to the brokerage firm and to anybody who brings a buyer. So here we have the sales commission of 7%. That's 7% of the gross price. If another agent brings a buyer, we agree to give them 2%, and that's going to be the same for both buyer agents and transaction brokers. So I'm going to put it out there on the MLS, and in the MLS, it's going to say how much somebody gets paid if they bring a buyer. If anybody, if I show the house to anybody, let me start over. If when the listing agreement ends this Friday, if I've discussed the purchase of buying your home with anybody, you need to use me on selling it to that person. I'm going to disclose to you in writing their name. And you need to use me for the next 30 days with that person, even if you sign with another agent. I've done my work. I found a buyer. We're just working on getting it tied up. And you need to work with me during that period. So this Section 8 just says I can't get paid by anybody else for services on your house. I can only get paid by you without your permission. So if you give me permission to get paid, to get a kickback from a inspector, great. But you need to be aware that it's happening. 9.1. This will be put on an MLS, and it will be put on the internet. It'll be put on multiple property information exchanges. And in those listings, you agree to let me put the address of the property in there. Here we go, saying it will be on the internet, like my website and such. Access to the property is going to be through an electronic lockbox. And down here, this says that you're not currently in a listing agreement with anybody else. And that's important. I wouldn't want you to be on the hook for 2 commissions. So here, we're going to list it for $350,000. And we're going to look for cash, conventional, FHA, and VA offers. That doesn't mean that we can't accept anything else, but that's what you're setting me out to look for. Someone who can pay $350,000 with cash, conventional, or FHA or VA offer. The earnest money that you are telling me to seek out is $7,000, and we want that in the form of good funds, which could be a cashier's check, a personal check, that sort of thing. You'll take your proceeds with a wire transfer when we close. I'm going to keep scooting down here. Here's what's included, as you and I discussed before when we were figuring out the value of the home. You're going to include 2 remote controls for the garage doors. Under personal property, when we talked about that, you said you would give all of your stuff. So all of your stuff is now included in this deal. And also included in this deal is the ownership of the garage. You have a condo, and the garage that is associated with your unit is deeded and owned by you. So we're going to transfer ownership of that garage and that storage facility that you have use of down in the structure there, which you don't own, but we're going to transfer. They'll get the use of that. And here we go. Here's what's excluded. None of this stuff. You said all of your stuff is included. None of your stuff is excluded. We're going to transfer ownership with a special warranty deed, and what that says is that you guarantee that that you own it legitimately, and if that turns out not to be the case, you could get sued. Now, you're going to provide a title insurance policy, and that's really going to be your shield between someone suing you and any issues that come up. Okay, we've got association assessments here at $243 a month. Is that correct? Is that up to date? Excellent. Okay, possession. You're going to give up possession of the property when there's a delivery of the deed and funding. That's basically what the closing is you give the buyer the deed and the buyer gives you the money, and that's when we're closed, and that's when they can have possession of the property. I've got here that you're going to agree to do a seller's property disclosure form. Now what this is a 5 or 6 page form that the state of Colorado came up with, and really it's a questionnaire that just prompts you to tell everything you know about the property. What issues have there been that have been repaired? What issues are there still existing? It's a voluntary form. You don't have to do this, but I really advise you to do it because it's kind of like your get out of jail free card. Everything that you know, you put on this form. And if anybody finds out, if anything comes up after the closing, the buyer can't say, hey, he concealed yada yada, because you put it on that form. And it can really either prevent you from getting sued or help you if you do get sued. If someone says you concealed something, you can point to that form and say, no, it was on that form. Okay, scrolling down, we're going down here. Forfeiture of payments. If we go under contract and if the buyer terminates, and they terminate for a reason that is not within their dates and deadlines, meaning they're in default and they lose their earnest money. You and I agree to split that earnest money. I've done a lot of work. You've delayed selling your house. We both should get something for it. So we agree to split the earnest money. All right, cruising on down, we agree not to discriminate. I want you to know I'm not an attorney and I'm not an accountant. So if you feel like you need legal or tax counsel, please go find it. Mediation, if there's any issues, we're going to mediate. Loser pays attorney's fees, good stuff like that. All kinds of fantastic contract stuff here. And we get down to the bottom where you're going to sign. Sweet. Okay. Now we're going to go to the disclosure documents. So one of the first disclosures is the seller advisory. Now look right up here. You'll see this is not a state approved form. This was created by the Cox Law Firm for Keller Williams, Colorado West Realty. It's our form, but what it is, it's saying you right here and the property there, broker, blah, blah, blah. It's disclosing things to you like I'm permitted to prepare contracts, but I'm not an attorney. If you need an attorney, get one. It talks about earnest money disputes and how sometimes it's better just to let things go because earnest money disputes can slow down the sale of a home. If there is like a bona fide thing though, we can fight it. But just remember that fighting often means attorneys, and attorneys usually mean everybody loses, in my opinion. Buyer's possession, this one says, do not give the buyer possession of the property prior to closing. There are so many issues that can come up with doing so. Things that have to do with liability, insurance, damage to the property. What if they don't close? Oh man, it can get so messy. Same thing goes to possession after closing. If you want to stay in the house after closing, it can turn into a bit of a mess. Or what if you damage something? What if they say you damaged something? What if, we just don't want to do it. Loan fraud, yeah. Loan fraud is bad. We don't want to do loan fraud, wire fraud. Be aware of wire fraud. Always confirm wiring instructions in person. Emails can get hacked, and we want to be careful of that. Okay, home warranty. We talked about home warranty in the listing presentation. This goes over it again. MLS rules, I have to follow all those rules. HOA documents, we're going to have to get HOA documents. Seller financing. So sometimes people offer seller financing. It, again, can make things complicated and get messy. If you want to do seller financing, you need to get an attorney. And we'll talk more about that later if that comes into play. Homeowner's insurance, even though you have it listed, you still need to keep your homeowner's insurance. People who come into the house, they need to be protected by your homeowner's policy. Tax consequences. Selling a house can have tax consequences. Talk to your accountant about that. All right, remodeling. So if your home was built before 78 and you've remodeled since 2010, there are different rules about remodeling standards, and the buyer may request confirmation that it was done in accordance with the EPA standards. Be aware of that. Septic. This one doesn't really apply in Mesa County, but there are counties like Pitkin County that require inspections and transfer documents of septic systems. Broker may provide information concerning the asking sales price. Broker is not a licensed appraiser, so we try to get you the best market value we can, but we're not an appraiser. If you need a professional for any such service, get them. We know a lot, but we don't know everything. Just be aware of that. Okay, let's go to the source of water addendum. So what this document is it's a disclosure to the buyer about where their water comes from. And I know that may seem silly. Look, right here we have checked this box that it comes from the city of Grand Junction, and here's their address and their website. This is for the buyer. If they want to know of the availability of water, if the city of Grand Junction is going to run out of water or not, this document discloses to them. I know this may seem silly, but this came from a case in Highlands Ranch where people were buying properties in Highlands Ranch, and a year or two later after they bought property, it turned out that the well had run dry. And the Highlands Ranch is this huge subdivision south of Denver, and the well ran dry, and everybody was assessed with like $4,000 or $5,000 to drill new well and to replace the whole system. And people said, what do you mean well? This is a subdivision, we're on a well? Nobody realized that they weren't on a municipal water system and that they were responsible for paying for their water system. So that's where this document came from, disclosing to people whether a property is on a well or whether it comes from some municipal water provider. All right, let's see. Square footage disclosure. So we advertise square footage. We have something in the MLS. We have it in all our ads. But sometimes square footage, there's discrepancies. And this document says that the listing licensee, that's me, I have not measured the property. However, I am providing information from the assessor's office that says that the property is 1,863 square feet. Now, if I have information from the assessor's office that says 1863, and I have building plans that say it's 1850, and an appraisal that says it's 1890, I provide all three of those on this document and choose which one to advertise. So there we have a signature for you saying that you acknowledge receipt of this disclosure. This is not you signing that the square footage is correct. This is you just acknowledging receipt of this disclosure. Going to closing instructions. So there's a lot of stuff in the closing instructions that's going to be reiterated from the contract. What the closing instructions are, these are instructions from you, the seller, and whoever the buyer is, from the two of you, the buyer and the seller, to the title company. Instructions to the title company and an agreement between the buyer and seller and title company of how the transaction is going to be closed. And really this document mirrors a lot of the stuff in the contract, like I said, but the contract is not between the buyer, seller, and the title company. The title company is not a party to that at all. So what this regurgitates how the transaction is going to be closed. Buyer is going to sign it there. You're going to sign it here. And then the title company is going to sign it there. This is another section here where I am hiring the title company to prepare some documents, and I'll sign that, and the title company will sign there. So that is all of the listing documents, and let's go ahead and get them emailed to you and sign them. Fantastic.